tables set up. There's going to be some small groups starting in just a minute. Before I begin, I thought I'd show you this. We are going to begin, break up our morning between two different things. One, we're going to do a workshop, and right in the middle we have a very special guest, one of the key bishops in the Catholic Church here in the Philippines. But this morning, we're going to do a Build a Course workshop. And what I thought to do was to use the energy and wisdom of you all to build another lesson, another module for Mare training. So you've already done lessons 1 to 4. Well, lesson 5 or lesson 6 will be really, I'm digging all of your wisdom out of you, and we're going to put that together into lesson 6. I might ask to film 1 or 2 of you as well to get some ideas on really practically how do we best serve Filipino seafarers. You might know in your country, I know in a number of countries, Australia, a few in maybe UK, US, there's this Build-A-Bear workshop. You can go to the shopping mall and build your own teddy bear. Maybe you know this. It's a racket for sure. But nonetheless, there's lots of desperate fathers like myself nearing Christmas that succumb to this racket. This morning we're going to sort of do that build your own course type of a thing where we want to build a course. And it's going to be in 2 parts. One before the bishop comes and then one after the bishop speaks. The first one is on our approach, really, to serving Filipino seafarers, how we overcome certain preconceptions and unfortunate misconceptions about serving Filipino seafarers. And then the second part will be on our work together, on partnerships, on ecumenism, also on overcoming, again, in really important barriers when we're trying to serve seafarers. Now, before I just launch you into small groups, we like to have someone who's guiding us in our conversations, and that guiding is going to come from Father Bruno, who many of you know already for a long time. Father Bruno has served as a chaplain in a number of places, and more recently has served a decade or more as the International Director of Stella Maris. But on January the 27th, 2023, he stepped down, retired from that position with great honor, and is now on his a cruise of the world to see the world until he gets his next appointment, which hopefully will again be in seafarers ministry somewhere in the world. So I give the microphone first to Father Bruno, who will give some opening thoughts and reflections, and then I'll split you up into small groups where we'll have some work to do.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. I think many are the images that we can take from the Bible that we can use to describe the work that as a chaplain we do for the seafarers, fishers, and their family. We could use the image of the Samaritan that stopped along the road to help the man that was beaten by the robbers. We can use the image of the Good Shepherd that goes and cares for his flock, but he goes and looks for the lost one. Personally, I like a passage from the Old Testament, Exodus 3, and that is the call of Moses. And he says, God heard the cry of the Israelites. He is concerned about their suffering, and he sent Moses. Today, God hears the cry of the people of the sea, and he sent us to provide material and spiritual assistance to them. What is important is to remember that we are sent by God with the mission to free the seafarers from whatever suffering and difficulties are going through. Unfortunately, I think sometimes we forgot this. And we are going to the seafarers not because we feel that we are sent by God, but to promote our organization, to show how good and how gifted I am. Every time I go to the port and I met a seafarers, I must remember that I'm doing this because he's sending me there. Are we aware of that? Because otherwise, if we go and we try to promote ourselves, our organization, we create a lot of misunderstanding, we create a lot of competition. Another important things in the story of Moses, and I like it, and it might help us to put ourselves in the right perspective when we come across of seafarers in different nationality and culture, especially of Filipino culture. God said to Moses, "Take off your sandal, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." I think 10 days ago there was a picture of King Charles III that he went to the Japanese embassy. He was asked to remove his shoes, and his socks has a nice hole on it. I don't know if you have seen it, at least in Italy it was going around. And it was quite embarrassing, I think. In the Philippines, like in many parts of Asia, when you enter a house, you have to remove your shoes because they want to avoid that you will bring dust and dirt in their house, and they will give you a pair of slippers. This is also a sign of respect that you have. So every other culture that we come across is a holy ground. And in sign of respect, I should remove my shoes. That often are our prejudice, our mental structure, my way of seeing and judging the reality in order to understand better the person that I have in front of me. So maybe some of the discussion that you can have is, what are the shoes between brackets that I'm wearing and prevent me to accept, understand, and most of all, respect the new culture that I am encountering? Am I capable of leaving my shoes outside of the house and wear the simple slipper that they're offered to me? I have my beautiful shoes. Why I have to take it out and wear this cheap slipper that they are putting in front of me? That's happened. another reflection that has helped me when I came to the Philippines. We all come from countries that use spoon and fork and knife to eat. But I think you might be familiar that Filipinos like to eat with their hands. The interesting thing is that in Tagalog, for example, there are no words for spoon, fork, and knife. They use the Spanish words because they were using the hands, so they didn't need something to. And also, again, if you are familiar with Filipinos, they usually eat with spoon and fork, not with knife. Because the Spanish people, they didn't want to give the knife to the Filipinos because they were afraid that the Filipino would kill them. But anyway, so Filipino is with the hands. If we move further in Asia, there are the chopsticks. And so these different ways of eating teaches us that within different cultures, there is nothing wrong or right in doing things. There are different ways of doing things. The first consequence of this assumption is that I should never judge an attitude. I should never say, in principle, this is wrong, simply because I grew up in a different culture, because I was grow up using spoon, fork, and knife, and I have to come to Asia, I have to use chopstick. There is nothing wrong or right. There are different ways of doing the things. And we cannot judge, because all of us knows very well the saying that never judge a man until you have walked a mile in his shoes. So again, a question. Am I capable of approaching different culture without judging, with respect? But having this attitude of not judging is essential. But also there is another important thing, a further step that has to be done. Because we are people of God, because we are bringing the message of gospel and Jesus Christ to the seafarers and fishers and their family, the question is how we can inculturate, how we incarnate the universal message of the gospel in the different culture, especially in the Filipino culture that apparently seems deeply rooted in Christianity, but in reality is not really like that. We can say that Filipinos are all Catholic because are all baptized. It's part of the social structure, the social tradition, so you are baptized. But they are not deeply rooted in their Christian faith. So how we can evangelize these things? There are some attitude. For example, you might be familiar with the Filipinos that if something happened on board of a ship, you have to go on board at least with 4 gallons of holy water, and you have to sprinkle every corner of the ship. Sometimes people in their culture, Filipino, they consider this something magic. Means I sprinkle the holy water and the evil spirit, the ghost goes away, or other things. Means the holy water, we all use holy water, is one of the sacramental things that we use, at least on the Catholic Church, but I think also on other churches. So how we can make them understand the value of this holy water without making it a magical things. Also, for example, you might also be familiar And here nearby there is a famous church that is the National Shrine of Mother of Perpetual Help. And there is the perpetual novena. Usually the novena is 9 days, and after you stop. No, for them it's a perpetual, it's always. And often the people, and I think this happened also in other culture, you say, I did the novena, but God didn't answer my prayer. No? So how we can evangelize this different Christian aspect that they are part of the life and the culture of the Filipinos, and make it really deeply rooted on the Christian faith. So these are some of the simple thoughts that I just throw there to you. So maybe in the small group you can answer to some of them. You can raise other questions. And thank you very much for listening to me.
Of course. So in the remaining minutes that we have, we want to now turn again, and we're keeping on building our course together, and so we have Father Bruno coming back to talk a little bit more about ecumenism and partnerships. And I want to underline this one. He might be a bit controversial, and I asked him to be. So some of what he might have to say might make us uncomfortable. And yet, in the context of serving Filipino seafarers, we probably need to have an open conversation about this. And so after Father Bruno does his work, we're going to again be in small groups. You might again be in the exact same small groups, but normally we'll just turn to each other there where you're sitting, so we don't have to move too far. But I invite Father Bruno again to give us some opening reflections that we can again chew on in our small groups afterwards.
I'm grateful that Jason already mentioned that I will be controversial, because when I was there, my heart was beating a little bit fast, because, but as I say, it's not the matter of being controversial. But anyway, so first of all, why we have to work in partnership? First of all, we have to remember that ICMA was founded to serve the seafarers in a spirit of communion, ecumenism, that goes behind any nationality, gender, and religion. And another thing I think is very important is that we should be proud of ICMA, because it's one of the few ecumenical organizations that was founded immediately after the Vatican II, when there was this enthusiasm for working together, getting together again, all the different Christian denominations. And after 50 years that was celebrated in Taiwan in 2019, ICMA is still functioning and is still doing a great service, in spite of the ups and downs of its history, because it was not always easy. And we know that working ecumenically and serving ecumenically the Filipino seafarers is easier said than done. We are called to give witness to unity in the fragmented world of the maritime industry. And also why we have to provide ecumenical service. Because Filipino seafarers are the biggest national seafarers that they have a Christian background, and we ought to serve them. There are other nationality, but is much smaller in number. So we are called also to respond to them, because there are many. Though I think also the Filipino seafarers are changing, and while maybe before, when you were going on board and they say, Father, can we have a mess? Father, can we have a service? Now is, Father, can you bring us to Walmart? Father, I don't know if there is a kind of a shift also on this one. Before it was much easier to organize maybe some services on board. Now, maybe also because they have less time, and so they prefer to go to Walmart or to any other big shopping center to shop. And I think we have to consider this, because this is a kind of things that is entering on their culture also. So it's more on bringing things and good for their family. So I was saying that to work together ecumenically is much easier to say than to be done. First, because the way that we member of the different organization approach them. Since we think that Filipino seafarers are easily getting along, and generally they would never say no when either a priest or a chaplain or a volunteer will suggest something. Oh, what do you think if we have the mass? Can we have the mass? Can we have a service? So the Filipino, because we know they always say yes. So, first of all, and I think you have learned this during the other lesson that you had online, we know that with the Filipinos, there is only one yes, but there are several different meaning to this yes. No? And I think any of you has his own experience about this. So it's important for us to properly formulate our request or our suggestion to them, because we should give them the freedom to say no. Even if they say yes, we have to learn to understand that the yes they tell us is a no. So we have to learn to read their body language. And that was my frustration when back in 1985 I was assigned to work in the Philippines, and I was getting into this culture and everything, and I was asking something, I was getting yes. Oh, so you are coming tonight for dinner with me? Yes. In the evening I waited for half an hour, it didn't show up. But because the yes that give it to me was a no, and I didn't understand. And if you see somebody after that, you cannot say why you didn't come to dinner, because for the Filipino, it was not a yes, was not a no, was a no. And so the problem was mine, was not with him. So, for example, if you say, okay, you are coming to dinner with me tonight. Oh yes, Father, I will try my best. That is no. If I say I will try my best, he looks somewhere else. Make sure that is no. Or if you say, so can we have mass? Okay, Lamb, Father. It's like I don't have any other choice. You are putting it to me there. So it's important that we learn so that we don't impose our will to them. Now, so we should be very careful. And going back to what I was saying earlier, if I am capable of entering in their culture, so we have to be respectful of them and be aware that we are there, sent by God to provide material and especially spiritual care without promoting our organization and ourselves. And here is where I can become a little bit controversial.
I was waiting for it.
But I would like that in this context, we should have an honest and sincere discussion on how we can provide spiritual care without, first of all, creating competition among us, but also respecting the seafarers. And we know that sometimes we both, on both sides, Catholic and other denomination, the problem is we go on board and say, I will say Mass. And there sometimes is where there are misunderstanding and where things could become controversial. No, because when you say, I will say a Mass for you, the Filipino will say yes. But sometimes we are not really transparent. Sometimes we are not really sincere. We have to be clear and say, I will say a Catholic Mass for you, or I will say an Anglican Mass for you, or I will say I give you a Protestant service. Because based on my experience, sometimes seafarers would come and say, oh, we had a Mass, but it was different from my Mass in the Philippines. No. So the respect that I was saying, that we have to have for them, is also to be transparent. I don't have any problem if somebody goes and say, look, I'm going to say a Mass, but it's not a Catholic Mass. And I believe if the Filipino seafarer says yes, and he participates to that Mass with a deep faith, it's okay. No, if there is nothing other. But that's the problem, that sometimes it creates conflict between chaplains in situation. I know that most of the time it depends on soul personality. No, because often when we have this misunderstanding, there are this tension for these kind of things, is more on personality. But it's something that it happens, and sometimes it creates tension. So maybe it's something that we should discuss among us and see how we can work more ecumenically, more openly, and we don't enter into competition among each other on these things. Another thing that I think is a great value that Filipino they have is this sense of spirituality. No? And often this can be used also among other members, because often Filipino seafarers, they are working with other crew members that maybe they are Western crew members, that they don't have anymore the feeling of spirituality, of religiosity and everything. And so sometimes maybe we can work with the Filipinos to bring this spirituality also among the other members, especially when, for example, there are ecumenical celebration because there are some tragedy, there are some accident on board and everything. Filipino can be a very resourceful people for us on organizing something and other things. So these are the things that I just wanted to say. This is the things controversial, but let us discuss it openly without pointing the finger to each other or other things. Let us try to find a solution for which we can provide the best pastoral care in the situation in which we are, without competing with each other, because that will hurt the seafarers, especially the Filipino that we are serving. We have to respect them. We have to respect their faith, both if it's Catholic or any other Christian denomination. Thank you.
So we have a few moments. We've laid some controversy